The moon that watched like an executioner. The moon was wrong. Too bright, too close, too watchful, hanging over the hollow ridge clearing like an unblinking eye that saw everything and forgave nothing. Stacy Weaver stood barefoot on the ritual stone, the frost biting into her skin with the cruelty of iron teeth. Around her, the Crescent Pack formed a suffocating circle, their bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, their breath rising in steaming clouds that smelled of pine smoke and anticipation and judgment. Always judgment. The air was thick enough to choke on. This was supposed to be sacred. The mating selection. The night the moon goddess herself bound fates and decided futures, weaving destinies beneath her silver gaze. But for Stacy, this was a death sentence dressed in ceremony. Before we continue, please hit the subscribe and like button and tell me which city you're tuning in from. I love to know where this story found you. Now let's dive in. The drums began. Deep and slow, each beat slamming into her chest like a fist against her ribs. She could barely breathe. The thin ceremonial robe they'd draped over her shoulders did nothing to protect her from the cold, or from the eyes. So many eyes, watching, waiting, hungry for the spectacle of her submission. She was an Omega, the lowest rank, the silent one, a shadow wrapped in flesh, a wolf who'd learned early not to make eye contact, not to speak unless spoken to, not to dream of things that were never meant for girls like her. And tonight, the moon had chosen Marcus Hale. He stood across from her, bathed in firelight, his broad shoulders gilded gold, his face carved from arrogance and cruelty. He was the future alpha of the Crescent Pack, golden-haired, powerful, everything the pack worshipped. And he despised her. She could see it in the curve of his smile, in the way his gaze traveled over her body like she was meat on a hook. Not a person, not even a wolf, just a thing he would own. The memory clawed at her throat. 2 nights ago, behind the armory. His voice low and venomous as he cornered her against the stone wall, fingers digging painfully into her wrist until she gasped. When the bond seals, you'll learn obedience, one way or another. She had tried to pull away, tears streaming, voice breaking, hands trembling as she begged him to choose someone else, to let her go, to spare her. He'd laughed, a sound like breaking glass, and then pressed closer. His breath hot against her ear. An Omega's only purpose is to submit, and I'm going to enjoy teaching you that lesson every single night. Her stomach twisted at the memory. Bile rose in her throat. She forced it down and stared at the ritual stone beneath her feet, counting the cracks in the granite to keep from screaming. The elder stepped forward now, ancient and solemn, his voice rasping like dead leaves scraping stone. He raised the ceremonial bowl high, the moon water inside shimmering with an eerie silver light that seemed alive. Marcus Hale, the elder intoned, his words echoing across the silent clearing. Do you accept the will of the goddess and claim Stacy Weaver as your mate? Marcus's smile widened, predatory, possessive. I accept, he growled, his voice rolling through the circle like thunder. The word felt like a blade sliding between her ribs. He didn't look at her. He looked past her, at his father, at the pack elders, at the future he was claiming. She was just part of the prize. The elder turned to her. His pale eyes bore into hers, cold and indifferent. Stacy Weaver, do you submit? Submit? The word tasted like poison on her tongue. Her heart was pounding so hard, she thought it would explode. Her hands were shaking. Her knees threatened to buckle. Every instinct in her body was screaming. Screaming to run, screaming to fight, screaming to do anything but stand there and let this happen. But she couldn't move. The pack leaned in, breaths held, waiting for her to do what Omegas always did, to bow her head, to whisper the word that would seal her fate, to disappear into the role they'd carved for her since birth. Marcus stepped closer, firelight dancing in his eyes, and then Stacy did the unthinkable. She stepped back. The gasp that ripped through the clearing was like a living thing. Wolves snarled. The ritual shattered in an instant, the sacred circle broken by a single backward step. "You don't get to choose," Marcus snarled, fury twisting his handsome face into something monstrous. Stacy's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I do tonight." And then she ran. She tore through the forest, bare feet slamming against frozen ground, lungs burning, branches clawing at her skin like vengeful hands. Behind her, howls erupted as trackers gave chase, their voices rising in a chorus of rage and disbelief. But Stacy had planned for this. 3 weeks ago, she'd signed a contract in blood, a desperate bargain whispered among outcasts and smugglers. A marriage of convenience to a wolf no one wanted, a once great warrior named Freddie Murray, paralyzed from the waist down after a rogue ambush, living in isolation, dying slowly. A man who needed a caretaker, not a mate. No claim, no bite, no dominance, just a name, just protection. The carriage waited at the ravine exactly as promised, lanterns glowing like dying stars. Stacy collapsed inside, shaking, bleeding, gasping for air, but alive. She thought she was free. She was wrong. The contract, written in blood. The carriage lurched forward, wheels grinding over frozen earth as Stacy pressed herself against the worn leather seat, chest heaving, heart hammering so hard she could hear it over the sound of hooves. Blood trickled from cuts on her feet, her arms, her face. But she was inside. She was moving. She was... A howl split the night behind her. Marcus. The sound was raw with fury, echoing through the mountains like a promise of vengeance. Stacy flinched, wrapping her arms around herself as the carriage picked up speed, the driver cracking the reins with urgent precision. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. But the relief tasted like ash. 3 weeks earlier. The tavern at the edge of Crescent Territory didn't have a name. Places like this never did. Stacy had slipped through the back entrance just after midnight, hood pulled low, hands trembling as she navigated the smoky darkness. She'd heard the rumors in whispers, fragments of conversation between servants, gossip traded in the marketplace, stories about wolves who fell through the cracks, who needed things the pack couldn't or wouldn't provide. And one name kept surfacing. Freddie Murray, a warrior, once legendary, now broken, paralyzed from the waist down after a rogue ambush that had killed half his battalion. Living in isolation somewhere beyond the northern border, dying slowly, alone. A man who needed a caretaker, a man who couldn't claim a mate even if he wanted to. The appeal was brutal in its simplicity. No dominance, no mating bite, no claim. Just a contract. A marriage in name only. Protection through a legal bond that even the Crescent Pack couldn't easily break. It wasn't hope. It was survival. Stacy had found the shadow broker in the corner booth. A wiry woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that saw too much. She hadn't asked questions, hadn't offered sympathy. She'd simply slid a parchment across the scarred wooden table. "Blood seal," the woman had said, her voice like gravel. "His name for your safety. He gets a caretaker. You get a way out. No love, no expectations, just survival." Stacy's hand had shaken as she pricked her finger with the ceremonial blade, watching crimson drops fall onto the contract, sealing her fate to a stranger's. "The carriage will be waiting at the eastern ravine," the broker had continued, pocketing the signed parchment. "The night of your selection ceremony. Don't be late." Stacy had nodded, throat too tight to speak. She'd walked out of that tavern with a lifeline, and the terrible knowledge that she was trading one cage for another. But at least this cage wouldn't break her. The present slammed back into focus as the carriage hit a rut, throwing Stacy against the side panel. She gripped the edge of the seat, forcing herself to breathe, to think past the panic clawing at her ribs. Behind them, the howls multiplied. The trackers were closing in, their wolves faster than any carriage, their rage giving them speed. The driver shouted something in a language Stacy didn't recognize, and the horses surged forward, hooves thundering against stone as they climbed higher into the foothills. Higher. Stacy's stomach dropped. They should be descending. The route to the northern border went down through the valley, not up into the... "Wait," she called out, leaning toward the small window that separated her from the driver. "You're going the wrong way." The driver didn't respond, didn't even glance back. Stacy's pulse spiked. "I said you're going the wrong way. The estate is..." "The estate," the driver interrupted, his voice calm and unnervingly steady, "is exactly where we're going, my lady." My lady. The words sent ice flooding through her veins. "I'm not..." Stacy started, but her voice died as the carriage crested a ridge and the landscape opened before her. Mountains, black stone cliffs kissed by snow, and rising from the mountainside like something carved from shadow and moonlight. A fortress. Obsidian walls towering impossibly high, battlements crowned with silver, banners bearing a crest she didn't recognize, a wolf's head wreathed in white flame. This wasn't a forgotten estate. This wasn't the home of a dying, paralyzed warrior living in isolation. This was a seat of power. "No," Stacy whispered, pressing her hands against the carriage window. "No, no, no." The driver's voice drifted back, almost amused. "You signed the contract, my lady. Freddie Murray of Obsidian Reach does not break his word." Obsidian Reach. The name hit her like a physical blow. Freddie Murray wasn't just a paralyzed warrior. He was... The carriage pulled through gates flanked by silver-armored guards who bowed as they passed. Torches blazed along stone corridors. Servants appeared from nowhere, their faces carefully neutral. Stacy barely registered being helped from the carriage, barely felt the warmth of the palace as they led her through endless hallways. A chamber prepared for her, silk sheets, a fireplace roaring, walls carved with ancient runes she couldn't read. She was still shaking when they left her alone, still bleeding when exhaustion finally dragged her under. And in the last moment before darkness claimed her, one thought burned through the haze. I didn't escape. I walked straight into a trap. Warmth woke her, a heartbeat beneath her cheek. Stacy's eyes snapped open, and her blood turned to ice. The fortress that was never promised. The carriage had been climbing for hours. Stacy pressed her face against the cold window, watching the landscape transform with growing unease. The valley forests had given way to rocky foothills, and now they were ascending into mountains she'd only ever seen from a distance, their peaks lost in cloud and shadow. This was wrong. The northern border was supposed to be down, through the lowlands, past the trading posts and scattered settlements where outcasts and rogues made their homes. Not up, not into the spine of the world, where the air grew thin and the silence pressed against her ears like water. "Where are we?" Stacy called out, her voice hoarse. "This isn't the way." The driver said nothing. The horses didn't slow. The temperature had dropped. Stacy could see her breath now, crystallizing in the darkness of the carriage. The cuts on her feet had stopped bleeding, but they throbbed with every heartbeat, a constant reminder of her flight through the forest, of Marcus's howl fading behind her. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold onto the fragments of her plan, the contract, the paralyzed warrior, the small estate where she'd live quietly, invisibly, forgotten, safe. But the road kept climbing. The trees disappeared entirely, replaced by barren rock and patches of snow that gleamed silver under the watchful moon. The silence was absolute. No wolves howling, no wind, no sound, but the rhythmic clatter of hooves and wheels. It felt like they were traveling to the edge of the world. And then she saw it. The obsidian fortress. It rose from the mountainside like something out of a nightmare or a legend. Massive walls carved from black stone that seemed to drink the moonlight rather than reflect it. Towers climbing impossibly high, their peaks crowned with battlements and banners that snapped in a wind Stacy couldn't feel. Silver light blazed from 1,000 windows. Torches lined the approach, their flames dancing in perfect synchronization. This wasn't a forgotten estate. This was a kingdom. No, Stacy whispered, pressing her palms against the window. No, this can't be right. There's been a mistake. The carriage rolled through gates flanked by guards in silver armor, their faces hidden behind wolf-shaped helms. They bowed as the carriage passed. Bowed. Stacy's heart hammered against her ribs. Stop, please, you have to stop. But the carriage didn't stop. It rolled forward through a courtyard paved with stones that gleamed like polished obsidian, past fountains frozen mid-flow, past more guards and servants who lined the path like silent witnesses. When the carriage finally halted, Stacy didn't wait for assistance. She shoved the door open and stumbled out, her bare feet hitting cold stone, her legs nearly buckling from exhaustion and terror. "There's been a mistake," she said again, louder now, addressing anyone who would listen. "I'm not supposed to be here. I signed a contract with Freddie Murray of Obsidian Reach," a woman's voice interrupted smoothly. Stacy spun to find a tall woman in midnight blue robes standing at the base of wide stone steps. Her silver hair was braided elaborately, her expression unreadable. "Yes," Stacy breathed. "But he's supposed to be, I thought—" "You thought correctly, my lady," the woman said, her tone perfectly neutral. "You married Freddie Murray, and now you are home." My lady. There was that phrase again, spoken with reverence, with formality, with power. "I don't understand," Stacy said, her voice cracking. "He's paralyzed. He's dying. He lives here," the woman said simply. She gestured to the fortress behind her. "As do you now. Come. You must be exhausted." Stacy wanted to run, wanted to demand answers, wanted to scream that this was all wrong, that she'd signed up for obscurity and safety, not this, whatever this was. But her body betrayed her. The adrenaline that had carried her through the ritual, through the forest, through the endless carriage ride, it drained away all at once. Her vision swam, her knees buckled. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy, my lady," a deep voice murmured. A guard, his face still hidden. "We have you." Stacy tried to protest as they lifted her, tried to fight as they carried her up the stone steps and through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. Vaulted ceilings, tapestries depicting battles she didn't recognize, torches casting dancing shadows on walls carved with runes that hurt to look at too long. They brought her to a chamber that stole what little breath she had left. A massive bed draped in silk, a fireplace roaring with flames that gave off heat but no smoke. Windows overlooking mountains that stretched endlessly into the night. Everything was too beautiful, too perfect, too wrong. "Rest, my lady," someone said. She couldn't tell who anymore. "Everything will make sense soon." Stacy wanted to argue, wanted to demand they take her back, wanted to understand what kind of trap she'd walked into. But darkness was already pulling at her, dragging her down with inexorable weight. She collapsed onto the bed, still wearing her torn ceremonial robe, still covered in blood and dirt and frost. The silk was impossibly soft beneath her cheek. Her last coherent thought was a desperate prayer to a goddess who'd never listened before. Please let this be a nightmare. Please let me wake up anywhere but here. But as consciousness slipped away, she felt it. Warmth. A heartbeat. Someone breathing beside her in the darkness. The king in the marriage bed. Stacy woke to warmth. Not the warmth of blankets or fire, but the warmth of skin, of breath, of a heartbeat that thrummed steady and strong beneath her cheek. Her eyes snapped open. She lay in the massive bed, silk sheets tangled around her legs, firelight casting golden shadows across walls, carved with runes she still couldn't read. The chamber was exactly as she remembered, beautiful, lavish, wrong. But she wasn't alone. Her head rested on a broad chest, bare skin, solid muscle. She could feel the rise and fall of breathing, the steady rhythm of a pulse that seemed to echo through her own body in a way that made her stomach drop. Stacy froze, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. This couldn't be real. Slowly, carefully, she lifted her head. The man beside her was built like a warrior, broad shoulders, arms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories of battles survived. His skin was bronze in the firelight, his chest rising and falling with the easy rhythm of sleep. Silver hair fell across his face, longer than fashion dictated, streaked with white at the temples. His jaw was sharp, shadowed with stubble. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, another traced down his neck. He looked like violence made flesh, and he was moving. His legs shifted beneath the sheets, his fingers flexed against the pillow. Every muscle in his body radiated controlled power. Very much not paralyzed. Stacy's heart slammed against her ribs. She scrambled backward, sheets twisting around her, nearly falling off the edge of the bed. His eyes opened, piercing blue, sharp as winter sky, alert in an instant, as if he'd been awake all along, simply waiting. "You're awake," he said. His voice was deep, controlled, carrying the weight of absolute authority. Stacy's back hit the ornate headboard. "Don't! Stay away from me!" He didn't move, didn't sit up, just watched her with those impossibly blue eyes, his expression unreadable. "You're safe," he said quietly. "Safe?" Stacy's voice cracked. "I wake up in bed with a stranger, and you tell me I'm safe." "Not a stranger." His gaze didn't waver. "Your husband." The word hit her like a physical blow. "You're not Freddie Murray," she whispered. "You can't be. He's paralyzed." The man sat up slowly, every movement deliberate and controlled. The sheets pooled at his waist, revealing more scars, more evidence of a body that had seen war and survived it. Dying, living in isolation. He reached toward the nightstand. Stacy flinched, but he only picked up a crown. Silver, elegant, unmistakable. He set it down between them on the silk sheets like an accusation. "My full name," he said, his voice steady and terrible, "is Freddie Murray of Obsidian Reach." He paused, letting the words settle like stones. "Alpha King of the Northern Territories." The room tilted. Stacy couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pieces crashed together in her mind. The fortress, the guards, the reverence. "My lady." "No," she breathed. "No, that's not. The contract said Freddie Murray." His eyes held hers. It didn't lie. "You're not paralyzed. No. You're not dying." "That," he said quietly, "is more complicated." Stacy's hands were shaking. "You tricked me. The broker, the contract, all of it. You tricked me." "I saved you," Freddie said, and for the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not anger, something deeper. "From a man who would have destroyed you piece by piece until nothing remained. By binding me instead," Stacy's voice rose. "By lying to me. By—" She stopped. Her shoulder was burning. Stacy looked down, pulling at the collar of her torn ceremonial robe. Her breath caught. A mark glowed beneath her skin. Silver and white, intricate as frost patterns on glass, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. It looked ancient, powerful, permanent. "What did you do to me?" she whispered. Freddie's expression remained carefully neutral. "The bond formed the moment you entered Obsidian Reach. Royal territory. Royal magic." He paused. "You married a king, Stacy, whether you knew it or not. I didn't consent to this." She was on her feet now, backing toward the door, fury and terror warring in her chest. "I didn't agree to a bond. I signed up for a name, for protection, for survival," Freddie finished, "and that's exactly what I'm offering you." "This isn't survival. This is—" She couldn't find the words. "This is ownership." "Yes," he admitted, and the honesty of it stole her breath. "And I will answer for that. But first—" He stood. Stacy stumbled back another step. He moved like liquid power, like a predator who'd learned to mask his strength beneath civility. He reached for his shirt, pulling it on with practiced efficiency, and then he stopped, turned, pulled the fabric aside to reveal his chest. A mark burned there, angry red against bronze skin. Not a scar, something alive, pulsing, wrong. "This," Freddie said quietly, "is a curse. Cast by a witch I killed in battle 5 years ago. Every full moon, my wolf loses control. I become something feral. Something that has killed before." His eyes met hers. "I'm running out of time." Stacy's throat was tight. "What does that have to do with me?" "Because you carry white ember blood," he said. "A lineage believed extinct. Power capable of calming cursed wolves, of breaking bonds that should never have been forged." She laughed. A broken, desperate sound. "I'm an Omega, the weakest wolf in the Crescent Pack. I don't have power." "You were hidden," Freddie corrected. "Not weak. Your parents suppressed your abilities to keep you safe. But I've searched for you for 3 years." He took a step closer. "You're the only one who can save me. Or die trying." "Yes." At least he didn't lie about that. Stacy's mind was spinning. The bond mark on her shoulder. The curse on his chest. The fortress. The crown. Everything she'd thought she was running to had been a carefully constructed trap. "When?" she asked, her voice hollow. Freddie's expression darkened. "The full moon is tomorrow night." The beast. Beneath the crown. The palace changed as the full moon rose. Stacy felt it in the air, a charge like lightning waiting to strike. Servants moved through corridors with hurried steps and lowered voices. Guards checked weapons that gleamed silver in the torchlight. Doors were reinforced, windows shuttered. Everyone was preparing for war. She'd spent the day in her chamber, fury and fear warring in her chest. The bond mark on her shoulder pulsed with steady rhythm, a constant reminder of the trap she'd walked into. Freddie had given her space, or perhaps he'd been avoiding her. Either way, she hadn't seen him since that terrible morning revelation. Alpha King, cursed, tomorrow night. Now tomorrow had become tonight. Stacy stood at her window, watching the moon climb above the mountains. It was enormous, swollen and bright, hanging in the sky like a wound that refused to close. Just like the night of the selection ceremony. "My lady," a soft voice behind her. The woman in midnight blue robes. She'd said her name was Alara, the king's advisor. "You should move to the lower chambers. It's safer there." Safer from what? Stacy didn't turn from the window. A pause. From what he becomes. Stacy finally looked at her. Has anyone ever survived calming him? Ilara's expression flickered, just for a moment. Grief. Loss. 3 have tried. Healers, witches. 1 claimed to have phoenix blood. Her voice dropped. None survived past the first touch. Ice flooded Stacy's veins. And he thinks I can? He believes you carry white ember. Ilara met her eyes. But belief and certainty are different things. If you value your life, my lady, you'll stay far from the throne room tonight. She left before Stacy could respond. The whispers grew louder as darkness fell. Servants passing in hallways, their voices barely audible, but impossible to ignore. Last time, he nearly brought down the east wing. They found the healer's body 3 days later. The curse is getting stronger. One day it won't let him come back. Stacy pressed her hands against the cold stone wall, trying to steady her breathing. She should stay here. Should lock the door and wait for morning and pray the fortress survived the night. She owed Freddie Murray nothing. He'd lied to her, trapped her, bound her with magic she didn't understand to serve a purpose she'd never agreed to. But the bond mark pulsed, and somewhere deep in the fortress, something roared. The throne room had been emptied, furniture removed, tapestries torn down. Only bare stone remained, and Freddie chained at the center, silver chains, blessed by moon magic and anchored to the floor with bolts as thick as Stacy's wrist. He knelt in the middle of the vast space, head bowed, silver hair falling forward to hide his face. He'd removed his shirt. The curse mark blazed across his chest like a brand, pulsing red and angry, spreading tendrils of darkness across his skin like poisoned roots. You shouldn't be here. His voice was strained, wrong. Something growled beneath it. Stacy stood in the doorway, flanked by guards who looked ready to drag her away. Neither should you. I don't have a choice. He looked up, and Stacy's breath caught. His eyes were changing. Blue bleeding into gold, into red. His canines lengthened, claws extended from his fingertips, scraping against stone. Run, Freddie said, and then the moon crested the highest peak. The transformation was agony made visible. Freddie threw his head back and screamed, a sound that was wolf and man, and something ancient and wrong. His body convulsed, bones cracked and reformed. The curse mark exploded outward in waves of crimson light. The chains held, barely. Power radiated from him in pulses that made the walls tremble. Windows shattered, stone cracked, the very air seemed to scream. And then the beast looked at her. Nothing human remained in those eyes, only hunger, only rage, only the need to destroy. The chains groaned. Get her out, one of the guards shouted, reaching for Stacy's arm. But the bond mark was burning, not painful, pulling, like a rope tied around her heart, dragging her forward. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet moved toward the beast instead. My lady, no! Stacy barely heard them. The pull was overwhelming, drowning out fear, drowning out logic. She walked across the throne room floor as the beast lunged against its chains, snapping and snarling, claws tearing at the stone. One chain snapped, then another. Everyone out! Ilara's voice, sharp with command. Seal the doors. Stacy heard the massive doors slam shut behind her, heard the bolts slide home, heard running footsteps fade into silence. She was alone with the monster. The beast tore free of the final chain and lunged. Stacy didn't run. She stepped forward and pressed her hand against his chest, against the curse mark that burned like hellfire. Light erupted, white, blinding, pure as snow and bright as lightning. It exploded from Stacy's palm, flooding through the beast, wrapping around it like chains made of starlight. The creature roared, thrashing, fighting. But the light held. Stacy gasped as power poured out of her, vast and ancient and utterly beyond her understanding. It felt like opening a dam she'd never known existed. The white ember burned through her veins, through her bones, through the bond mark that connected her to the beast. To Freddy. Come back, she thought desperately. Come back to me. The beast's eyes flickered, gold to blue, red to silver. The snarls became gasps, the claws retracted, the monstrous form collapsed inward, bones cracking back into human shape. Freddy fell to his knees, shaking, gasping for air. The white light faded slowly, reluctantly, leaving behind only silence and the smell of smoke. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Freddy looked up at her, his face streaked with tears and blood, his expression raw with disbelief. "You stopped it," he whispered. "You actually stopped it." Stacy stared at her hand, still glowing faintly, white embers dying across her skin like falling snow. Outside the throne room, she heard the bolts slide back. The doors opened. Guards poured in, weapons drawn, then froze. Ilara stepped through, her eyes wide with shock. The curse mark on Freddy's chest had faded to pale silver, not gone, but dormant, sleeping. Every eye turned to Stacy, not with fear, with awe. "What are you?" Ilara breathed. Stacy looked at her glowing hand, at the bond mark pulsing silver on her shoulder, at Freddy kneeling before her, alive. "I don't know," she whispered. But one thing was certain. She was not the weak Omega the Crescent Pack had believed her to be. She had never been weak at all. The truth buried in her blood. They brought her to the seer's chamber at dawn. Stacy had barely slept. Her hand still tingled where the white fire had erupted, and the bond mark on her shoulder pulsed with a steady rhythm that felt louder now, more insistent. As if saving Freddy's life had awakened something that refused to be ignored. The chamber was circular, carved into the heart of the mountain itself. Crystals embedded in the walls caught the morning light, scattering rainbows across ancient tapestries. An elderly woman sat at the center, her white hair braided with silver thread, her eyes clouded with the milky veil of the sight. "White ember," the seer said before anyone spoke. Her voice was like wind through hollow stones. I had hoped I would never see it again. Stacy stood rigid, Ilara beside her, Freddy lingering near the doorway, as if afraid to come closer. "What does it mean?" "It means you are descended from the first wolves blessed by the moon goddess herself." The seer gestured for Stacy to approach. "May I?" Stacy hesitated, then extended her hand. The seer's fingers were cold as she traced the faint glow still visible beneath Stacy's skin. White ember wolves were peacemakers, healers of cursed bonds, bridges between feral and civilized. Her clouded eyes lifted. "And they were hunted to extinction 300 years ago. Why?" "Because power always breeds fear," Ilara said quietly. "White ember wolves could break alpha dominance, could sever mate bonds, could calm rogues and end blood feuds with a touch." She paused. "Alphas across the territories banded together and wiped them out." Stacy's stomach turned. "My parents knew what you were," the seer finished. "They suppressed your power the day you were born, bound it with blood magic so deep you would never sense it, never access it." Her expression softened. "They saved your life by making you invisible." "They made me weak," Stacy whispered. "They made you safe." The seer released her hand. "But suppression is not permanent. As you grew, the power would have begun to leak through. Small things at first. Emotions calming when you entered a room, tensions easing in your presence. Nothing obvious enough to notice. Unless someone was looking for it, Freddy said from the doorway. Everyone turned to him. He stepped forward slowly, his expression carefully controlled. The curse mark on his chest, visible through his partially open shirt, was still silver, still dormant. Marcus Hale sensed something in you. Not consciously, perhaps, but his wolf knew you were different. Stacy's blood ran cold. That's why he wanted me. Alphas crave power, Freddy said quietly. Especially power they can control. Own. Break. His jaw tightened. He would have destroyed you trying to claim what you are. And you're so different. The words came out sharper than Stacy intended. You searched for me. Tracked me down. Tricked me into a bond I never consented to. Yes. Freddy's voice was steady. I did all of that. The honesty of it stole her breath. I searched for 3 years, he continued, following rumors of Omega children born with unusual traits, disappearances, suppressed bloodlines. He met her eyes. When I heard about an Omega in the Crescent Pack, who was being forced into a mating with Marcus Hale, I knew. You couldn't have known. I gambled, he corrected. And I was right, but that doesn't make what I did acceptable. Stacy wrapped her arms around herself. You used me. I saved you from Marcus, and used you to save myself. Both things are true. Freddy took a breath. And now I'm going to give you something I should have offered from the beginning. He crossed the chamber and knelt before her. Stacy's heart stuttered. The royal bond can be broken, Freddy said quietly. It requires a ritual, pain, blood, but it can be done. He looked up at her. If you want your freedom, I will give it to you. The seer inhaled sharply. Ilara made a sound of protest. Your Majesty, Ilara said urgently, the curse will kill me, Freddy finished. Probably within the year, but that's not Stacy's burden to carry. His gaze never left Stacy's face. You didn't choose this, any of this. You deserve the right to walk away. Stacy stared at him, this powerful, dangerous man kneeling before her, offering her the one thing she'd wanted since she woke in his bed. Freedom. But the word felt different now. Complicated. I need time, she said finally. To think. To understand what I am. Freddy nodded and rose to his feet. Take all the time you need. And if I choose to leave, then I'll break the bond myself and have you escorted anywhere in the territories you wish to go. His expression was unreadable. With enough gold to start a new life, far from the Crescent Pack. It was more than generous. It was impossible. Stacy wanted to feel relief, gratitude, something. Instead, she felt the bond mark pulse and a strange, unwelcome ache in her chest. The messenger arrived that afternoon. Stacy was in the garden when she heard the commotion. Shouts from the gates, the clatter of hooves, urgent voices echoing through stone corridors. She found Freddy in the war room, surrounded by guards and advisors, a bloodied messenger kneeling before him. Say it again, Freddy commanded, his voice like winter itself. The messenger's face was pale. Marcus Hale of the Crescent Pack has declared the Omega stolen. He's demanding her return. He swallowed hard. And if she isn't surrendered within 3 days, he's promised to bring war to Obsidian Reach. Silence crashed through the room. Freddy's expression turned to stone. He's coming for her. And Stacy realized with cold certainty. She'd never been free at all. The alpha who refused to be rejected. Marcus Hale had never been told no. Not as a child, when he'd demanded the best of everything and received it. Not as a young alpha, when he'd taken what he wanted and crushed anyone who dared object. And certainly not by an Omega, who should have been grateful for his attention. The Crescent Pack elders stood before him in the council chamber, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed fear. The selection was interrupted, Elder Korath said carefully. The ritual incomplete. Technically, no bond was formed. She ran from me, Marcus snarled, his voice shaking the stone walls. She rejected the moon's will, my claim. She made me look weak in front of the entire pack. Be that as it may. And now I learn she's married some crippled wolf in the north. Marcus slammed his fist on the table, splintering the ancient wood. She's mine. The moon chose her for me. The moon also chose to let her run, another elder said quietly. Marcus's eyes flashed gold. Then I'll drag her back myself. Marcus! Korath's voice hardened. She is under the protection of Freddie Murray of Obsidian Reach. Starting a conflict with the Alpha King over an Omega would be worth it. Marcus's smile was all teeth and madness. I'll bring her back. And when I do, she'll learn what happens to wolves who forget their place. The elders exchanged glances, but Marcus saw the truth in their eyes. They wouldn't stop him. They were too afraid of what he'd become. Marcus rode for Obsidian Reach with 20 of his best warriors, their wolves running hard through mountain passes and snow-covered ridges. He'd sent the messenger ahead, a warning dressed as diplomacy. Return the Omega or face consequences. But Marcus didn't want diplomacy. He wanted blood. They reached the fortress at dusk on the third day. The obsidian walls rose before them, like a monument to power Marcus had only heard rumors of. Guards lined the battlements, their silver armor gleaming in torchlight. The gates opened before Marcus could demand entrance. Freddie Murray stood in the courtyard, flanked by armed guards, his expression carved from ice. He wore no crown, but power radiated from him like heat from a forge. Marcus dismounted slowly, his warriors spreading out behind him. You have something that belongs to me, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. I have a wife, Freddie corrected calmly, legally bound by contract and blood. She belongs to herself. She rejected a sacred ritual. She rejected you, Freddie interrupted. There's a difference. Marcus's control slipped. His eyes flashed gold. You think your walls protect you? Your title? I'll tear this fortress apart stone by stone if I have to. You're welcome to try. The challenge hung in the air like drawn steel. Marcus felt his wolf surge forward, felt the power coiling in his muscles, ready to strike. And then he looked at Freddie Murray. Really looked. This wasn't a crippled warrior dying in isolation. This was an Alpha King who'd survived battles Marcus could only imagine, whose scars told stories of wars won and enemies crushed, whose power made Marcus's wolf instinctively want to submit. Marcus would lose. Not eventually. Not after a long fight. Immediately. The realization was bitter as poison. 3 days, Freddie said quietly. You have 3 days to leave my territory peacefully. After that, you're an enemy of the crown. Marcus's smile never wavered, but something dark and desperate flickered behind his eyes. You can't watch her forever. He turned and left, his warriors following, their retreat echoing across the mountains. But Marcus Hale had never learned to accept defeat. That night, Stacy couldn't sleep. The confrontation at the gates had shaken something loose inside her. She'd watched from her window as Marcus rode away, and the look on his face. That wasn't surrender. That was a promise. She paced her chamber, the bond mark pulsing steadily. Somewhere in the fortress, she knew Freddie was awake too, planning, strategizing, preparing for a war that might never come, or might come sooner than anyone expected. Stacy moved to the window, staring out at the mountains bathed in moonlight. She'd been given a choice, stay or leave, keep the bond or break it. But how could she choose when Marcus would hunt her regardless? When her very existence had become a battleground for men who thought they owned her? A sound behind her. Soft. Wrong. Stacy spun and found Marcus Hale standing in her chamber. He'd climbed, somehow bypassed the guards, scaled the fortress walls, and slipped through her window like a ghost. His clothes were torn from the climb. His eyes were wild. And in his hand, a blade, silver, coated with something dark that gleamed purple in the firelight. Poison. "Did you really think I'd let you go?" Marcus whispered, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "Did you think you could humiliate me and live?" Stacy backed away, her heart hammering. "Marcus, please. I gave you everything." He stalked forward. "Protection, status, purpose, and you ran. You ran like I was the monster." "You are a monster," Stacy said, her voice steadier than she felt. Something in Marcus's expression cracked. "Then you should have submitted when you had the chance." He lunged. The poisoned blade flashed in the firelight, aimed straight for her heart. Stacy screamed, and the door exploded inward. White ember unleashed. Freddy moved like lightning. He crossed the chamber in a blur of motion, intercepting Marcus's lunge, his body a shield between the blade and Stacy. The poisoned steel, meant for her heart, buried itself in his shoulder instead. Freddy staggered, his face draining of color. "No!" Stacy screamed. Marcus wrenched the blade free, his expression twisted with savage satisfaction. "Wolf's bane," he hissed, "specially prepared. Even an alpha king can't survive." Freddy's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, sending him crashing into the stone wall. But the movement cost him. He dropped to one knee, the poison already spreading through his veins in black tendrils visible beneath his skin. "Freddy!" Stacy rushed to his side. His eyes were already glazing. The curse mark on his chest flared red, responding to the poison, to the trauma. "Get out," he rasped. "Guards are unconscious in the hallway." Marcus spat blood and rose unsteadily. "Did you think I came unprepared?" He gripped the blade tighter. "I'll kill him first. Make you watch. Then I'll take you back and teach you what happens to disobedient." Something inside Stacy snapped. Not fear, not panic. Rage. Pure, incandescent, absolute rage. She'd spent her entire life being prey, being hunted, being told she was weak, worthless, meant only to submit and serve and suffer in silence. But she'd stopped a curse that had killed 3 before her. She carried the blood of the first wolves blessed by the moon goddess herself, and she was done being afraid. White fire erupted from Stacy's hands. Not the gentle light that had calmed Freddy's curse, not the tentative flicker from before. This was an inferno. It exploded outward in waves of blinding brightness, pure as starlight and hot as the sun. The power roared through her veins, vast and ancient and utterly beyond control. She felt it burning away the suppression her parents had placed on her, shattering the bonds that had kept her small and silent and safe. The white ember answered to no one. "What?" Marcus stumbled back, raising his arm against the light. Stacy stepped forward, and the fire moved with her. "You wanted to own me," she said, her voice echoing with power that made the walls tremble. "Break me, teach me my place." The white flames wrapped around Marcus like chains. He screamed, not in pain, though the fire burned hot enough to sear, but in terror. The white ember didn't just attack the body, it attacked the wolf within. The dominance, the darkness, everything Marcus had built his identity upon. "Stop," he gasped, falling to his knees. "Please. Did you stop when I begged?" Stacy's hands blazed brighter. The bond mark on her shoulder burned white hot. "Did you show mercy when I was cornered behind the armory? When I cried?" The palace shook. Windows shattered throughout the fortress, glass raining down in crystalline waterfalls. Stone cracked. The very foundations groaned as power poured from Stacy in waves that threatened to tear reality apart. Guards burst into the chamber, then froze at the threshold, shielding their eyes from the light. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. "Stacy, you have to stop. You'll bring down the entire—" "He tried to kill Freddy," Stacy said, her voice barely recognizable. "He would have killed me. Dragged me back. Made me—" Her voice broke. And the white ember surged one final time. Marcus Hale screamed as the fire consumed him. Not his body, but his wolf. The alpha power that had made him cruel and arrogant and convinced of his own invincibility. The dominance he'd wielded like a weapon against anyone weaker than himself. The white ember stripped it away, piece by piece, until nothing remained but a broken man sobbing on scorched stone. Stacy released the power. The fire vanished. The sudden absence of light left the chamber in darkness, broken only by dying embers floating in the air like snow. Stacy swayed. "Freddy," she whispered, remembering. He was still on his knees, the poison still spreading, but his eyes were open, clear. The curse mark on his chest pulsed silver. Responding to her power, fighting the wolfsbane with borrowed white ember strength. "You saved me," he said hoarsely. "Again." Stacy tried to smile, tried to answer, but the power had taken everything. Her legs gave out. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Guards, Ilara. She couldn't tell anymore. The world was spinning, darkness closing in from the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw was Marcus Hale being dragged away in chains, his wolf broken, his eyes empty. Not dead, though perhaps death would have been kinder than what she'd done to him. She'd taken everything that made him dangerous, left him alive to remember it. Then darkness claimed her. Stacy woke to silence. Not the silence of danger, but of peace, of healing. Soft afternoon light filtered through curtains that swayed in a gentle breeze. She lay in the massive bed, silk sheets cool against her skin, her body aching but whole. The bond mark on her shoulder pulsed steadily, quieter now, like a heartbeat settling into rest. She turned her head. Freddy sat in a chair beside the bed, his shoulder bandaged, his color returned. The curse mark on his chest was barely visible, faded to the palest silver, almost invisible. He was watching her. How long? Stacy's voice came out as a whisper. 3 days. He leaned forward. The healers said you burned through enough power to level the fortress, that you should have died from the strain. But I didn't. No. His expression was unreadable. You didn't. Stacy sat up slowly, testing her limbs. Everything worked. Everything felt different, stronger, awake. "Marcus?" she asked. "Imprisoned. His wolf is gone." Completely. Freddy's jaw tightened. The Crescent Pack has already disowned him. They're asking for your forgiveness for his crimes. And asking for me to return? Never. Freddy's eyes blazed. I made it very clear what would happen if they ever approached you again. Stacy should have felt relief. Instead, she felt free. For the first time in her life. Truly free. You still want to break the bond? Freddy asked quietly. Stacy looked at him, this dangerous, powerful king who'd lied to her and saved her and given her a choice when he could have simply commanded. And she finally understood. Ask me, she said. Chosen, not claimed. Ask me, Stacy repeated. Freddy stood slowly, crossing to the window where moonlight spilled across stone floors. His reflection in the glass looked haunted, a warrior who'd survived battles but wasn't sure he'd survive this conversation. I was dying, he said finally. Not quickly, not mercifully. The curse was eating me alive, full moon by full moon. I'd watched it consume my control, my humanity, everything that made me more than a monster. He turned to face her. The seers gave me a year. Maybe less. Stacy's chest tightened. I searched for White Ember descendants because I was desperate, Freddie continued. Because I'd tried everything else. Magic, healers, bargains with witches who wanted my crown in exchange for false promises. His voice dropped. And then I heard about you. An Omega being forced into a mating with an Alpha who terrified her. Yes. He moved closer, but kept his distance. I told myself I was saving you. That marrying me, even under false pretenses, was better than what Marcus would have done. He paused. But the truth is, I needed you more than you needed saving. You lied to me. I did. Trapped me. Yes. Bound me with magic I didn't understand to serve a purpose I never agreed to. Freddie's expression cracked. Yes. And I have no excuse for any of it except desperation and cowardice. He took a breath. You deserved the truth from the beginning. You deserved a choice. Stacy studied him, this powerful king who'd brought her here through deception, but had given her something no one else ever had. The chance to become herself. The bond can still be broken, Freddie said quietly. I've had the seers prepare the ritual. If you want your freedom, I'll give it to you. No conditions, no bargains. He met her eyes. You'll have gold enough to live anywhere you choose, protection from the Crescent Pack, a new identity if you want it. And you? His smile was bitter. I'll die, probably within months, but that was always my fate. The curse will return without you. He said it simply, like a fact, like something already decided. Your power kept it dormant, but breaking the bond will sever that connection. Stacy's throat tightened. So my choice is stay and save you, or leave and let you die. No. Freddie's voice turned fierce. Your choice is to live the life you want, not the one your pack assigned you, not the one I trapped you into, not the one prophecy or fate or desperate kings tried to force on you. He stepped closer. What do you want, Stacy? The question hung in the air, like a held breath. Stacy closed her eyes and let herself remember. The girl who'd stood on the ritual stone, barefoot and terrified, trained to submit and serve and disappear. The Omega who'd learned not to make eye contact, not to speak, not to dream. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone new. Someone who'd stopped a curse with power she didn't know she possessed. Someone who'd faced down the Alpha, who'd tormented her, and stripped away everything that made him dangerous. Someone who'd chosen to run when running meant risking everything. Someone who'd been hidden her entire life, not because she was weak, but because she was dangerous. Stacy opened her eyes. I spent my whole life being claimed, she said quietly, by my pack, by Marcus, by expectations and hierarchy, and rules designed to keep me small. She looked at Freddie. You claimed me too. Even if you had reasons, even if you were dying. I know. His voice was rough. And I'm sorry. But you also gave me something no one else ever did. Stacy stood, crossing to him. You gave me a choice, even when it meant losing everything. Freddie's breath caught. Ask me, Stacy said again. He searched her face, hope and fear warring in his expression. Then, slowly, he knelt. The Alpha King knelt before her. Stacy Weaver, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion burning in his eyes. Will you stay? Not because of prophecy or bonds or curses. Not because I'm dying or because you're the only one who can save me. He paused. But because you choose to. Stacy felt the bond mark pulse on her shoulder. Not pulling, not demanding. Just waiting. I choose to stay, she said. The words felt like power, like freedom, like truth. Not for the curse, she continued. Not for the crown or the prophecy or because fate decided I should. She reached down, lifting his chin so their eyes met. I'm staying, because for the first time in my life, I want to see who I can become, and I want to do it here. Freddie's eyes glistened. Are you sure? I'm choosing myself, Stacy said, and right now, myself wants to be here, with you. The bond mark flared, not with force, but with warmth, with consent freely given, with power shared instead of stolen. Freddie rose slowly and cupped her face in his hands. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Stacy agreed, but I don't need you to deserve me. I need you to see me. I do. His voice was raw. I see you, Stacy. All of you. The power you carry. The strength you've always had. The choice you're making. She smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since arriving at Obsidian Reach. Then we'll figure the rest out together. When he kissed her, it wasn't a claiming. It was a promise. 6 months later, Stacy stood on the balcony overlooking the mountains, watching the full moon rise without fear. The curse mark on Freddie's chest had faded to nothing, broken completely by her conscious choice to stay, to heal, to share her power freely instead of having it stolen. Behind her, the council chamber echoed with voices, nobles and advisors debating policy, strategy, the future of the Northern Territories. They'd learned quickly that the new queen wasn't decoration, that her voice carried weight, that white ember power came with wisdom the kingdom desperately needed. Freddie joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. The Crescent Pack sent another envoy, he said quietly, asking for trade agreements. Let them wait, Stacy said. They spent years teaching me I was worthless. They can spend a few more months learning I'm not. He smiled. Cruel. Fair. The bond mark pulsed between them, no longer a chain, but a bridge, connecting them without controlling either one. Stacy looked up at the moon that had once watched her like an executioner. Now it felt different. Not a judge, but a witness to the choice she'd made, to stay, to rule, to be seen. Do you regret it? Freddie asked softly. Staying? Stacy thought about the girl on the ritual stone, the Omega who'd run barefoot through the forest, the woman who'd woken in a king's bed, terrified and trapped. That girl had been brave, but this woman, the one who'd chosen her own fate, was free. No, Stacy said, lacing her fingers through his. I don't regret it at all. She'd been claimed by prophecy, trapped by circumstance, bound by magic she didn't understand. But in the end, she'd chosen him. And that choice had changed everything. The end. If you enjoyed Stacy and Freddie's story, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Your voice decides which tale I tell. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where fate is challenged, power is reclaimed, and love is always a choice.